Om Nama Shreshtham Manumapi Shachiputram Atra Swarupam Rupam Tasyagrajam Urupurim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivaram Aho Radhika Madhava Sham Prapto Yasya Prasita Kripaya Shri Gurum Tam Natosmi Ninnadantam Pulakotkarena Vikasat Nipa Prasuna Chaving Prodvi Kritya Bhujadvayam Hari Hari Tyuchairvadantam Muhu Nrityantam Drutamasrunirjarachayai Sinchantamurvitalam Gayantam Nijaparshadaih Parivritam Tam Gaurachandran Stumaha Alibhik Paripalitah Prabalitah Sanandamalokitah Pratyasam Sufalam Sumano Falodaya Vidho Samodamamuditah Vrindaranya Bhuvi Prakasha Madhura Sarvatishayi Sriya Radha Madhavayo Pramodayatu Mam Ulalasa Kalpadrumaha Jai Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Echai Gosaira Kori Charana Bandhan Jaha Hoite Vignana Shabhishta Puram. So, I made a 1-hour video yesterday on this portion of the introduction, the first anuchhed to Priti Sandarbha, and apparently the microphone was not turned on. So I think the microphone is turned on today. I certainly hope it is. I don't know what happened yesterday. It was probably not plugged in. So I'm going to do it all over again. I never expected to go for a whole hour yesterday because this section is relatively short. But in a way, it's necessary to review what was stated before. In a book like the Priti Sandarbha, there's no separate introduction. The first anuchhed contains the introductory material, and then each anuchhed in the Priti Sandarbha, the way that it works is that basically each anuchhed has one principal verse from the Bhagavatam. So the entire construction of the Sandarbhas is based on verses from the Bhagavatam, which function more or less like stepping stones. But not all the siddhantas are necessarily contained in the verses themselves. The verses represent proofs for the siddhantas that Jiva Goswami himself draws, and he tries to show in cases where there are verses that have meanings that are ambivalent. So by ambivalent meaning, as we have seen in the introductory portion, that he is at pains always to say that there are these three aspects to the one single non-dual truth. Now, this is the interesting feature of Vaishnavism and Vaishnava thought, that it always has to be built on a basis of Advaita Tattva. It has to remain true to the principle of Advaita, because the Vedanta contains many, many statements that are Advaita in character. Just like yesterday we saw the word that tat-tvamasi, there has to be a way of explaining this tat-tvamasi that makes sense both from the point of view of the Advaita Tattva, and at the same time allows for the devotional point of view, which insists on the difference. So the oneness in difference, the difference in oneness, these two points of view in an inconceivable way. This is achintya bheda bhed, the idea that we as jivas are simultaneously one with the Supreme Truth, and yet for the sake of devotion, for the sake of love, that difference is maintained. So up to now, the basic goal of Jiva Goswami's argumentation in this introductory portion, which is in great part based on things that were already spoken of in the Sambandha Tattva section, the first 4 Sandarbhas, where this argument was made repeatedly in many different ways. So we saw references to bhagavat-Sandarbha, parama-puruṣārthatvena, and tattva-Sandarbha, and again we'll see those in today's reading as well. But the basic idea, if we look at the argumentation, the basic trend was to say that the fundamental principle that we're following, the basic starting point, is that the goal, the prayojana of every human being is to find, or not just every human being, but every living entity, because we're going to, we are not restricted to humanity in terms of our analysis. Every living being is in search of happiness and tries to avoid pain. This is a very simple thing. This is the way that we have evolved. If we look at the point from the point of view of evolution, we evolve because we find ways of being happy, and then we, once we have found a particular way of being happy, then we repeat that, and we find ways of avoiding suffering, avoiding death. So staying alive and avoiding death, that's the basic happiness. But then, of course, it goes on to more and more refined ways, and as the different species of life, that the quality of happiness remains or becomes increasing. So the idea is that we are looking for the atyantika sukha prapti and dukkha nivritti. That is, atyantika is the word that came up several times, that it has to be absolute. We want the highest happiness. We are always looking for higher sources of happiness. If this doesn't make, if this is not making us happy, then we look for something that will do a better job. And so we want better cars, or a better wife, or a better television, and so on it goes. Now, after establishing that, then it was established that mukti is that this happiness exists in the Supreme Absolute Truth, in the Tattva. That actually the Supreme Tattva, the Supreme Absolute Truth, is bliss in its very nature. And further on, the argument went on, that so this bliss in the further, so encountering this bliss, Brahma-prapti or bhagavat-prāpti, these two aspects of the Absolute Truth, either with features, with the energies, with the consequences or the results of the energetic actions of the Supreme, these are all either manifest or unmanifest. When it's unmanifest, when they're unmanifest, that's called Brahman, and when they're manifest, then that's Bhagavan. So in the manifest form, the one of the energies or features of the manifest form, because in Brahman, the energies are not manifest at all. And so the distinctions are not manifest. The attributes are not manifest. And so because of that, there's no possibility of love. But in the Bhagavat feature, the most important feature of Bhagavan is the feature of Priti, because that Priti gives access to Ananda. So Priti is a part of the Hladini Shakti. It's a Priti, it's an aspect of the Hladini Shakti and the Samvit Shakti, because it's also a form of knowledge. Jnanam, and so knowledge of the Supreme means direct experience of the Supreme. And this direct experience of the Supreme is possible through the energy of Priti. So these are the things that have been stated, and the last thing we learned before we came to, in the sixth part was that there are 6 particular aspects of that are important to understand about Priti. Priti, for instance, is the highest goal. That's the first thing. Through Priti, one attains, one eliminates all suffering. Through Priti, one is able to know God's other features, His other attributes. And to the extent that we have Priti, to that extent we have knowledge and experience of God's other attributes. And when we experience God's other attributes, then that also increases our Priti. These are all characteristics of Priti that are going to be shown in one way or another in the subsequent text. So the some substance of it is that we're talking about mukti, and here really hasn't talking about parama-puruṣārthatvena. Simply what Jiva Goswami has done is established that when we talk about mukti, when a Vaishnava talks about mukti, although he makes a distinction, although we do make a distinction between mukti and priti, or mukti and prema bhakti, preman pumarto mahan pancham puruṣārtha prem. It's the parama-puruṣārtha that jar samne trinatulya, in comparison to which all the other arthas, all the other puruṣārthas are equal to so much grass. It cannot be, there's no comparison. So this is the step-by-step process that experience, that happiness and the elimination of suffering, that by attaining sakshatkar of the Supreme, that's the highest pleasure, and the elimination, the absolute atyantika, final elimination of all suffering, and that the means, or that the actual encounter with the Supreme is the encounter of that quality, that particular attribute of the Supreme, namely his Hladini Shakti, which takes the form of Priti. If we encounter Priti, then all the other aspects of the divine are revealed. All the other aspects of the personality of Godhead are revealed. So when we speak about mukti, though mukti may have, though one may have mukti, the mukti in Brahman realization is not denied, but it's considered to be meager and inferior in comparison to the pleasure, the ever-increasing pleasure that comes about through Priti. So the last section, those 6, or at least the last 4 of the 6 characteristics of Priti that were talked about in 1.6, that those are characterized mainly by the relationship between Bhagavan's other characteristics and Priti. The relationship between Priti, the extent to which one has Priti, that's the extent to which one experiences Bhagavan's other features. The Bhagavan, and there's a reciprocal relation to the extent to which one experiences Bhagavan's other features. Those have a tendency to increase one's experience of Priti. So it's an unending, infinite progression that goes on. It has no end. Not in the way of Brahman realization, which is static. It's an ever-increasing experience of ever-increasing bliss as one enters into the infinite experience of the infinite attributes of the divine person. So now we come into 1.7. So this is the state that we've reached in. So we have some very, very important basic precepts, or very basic important steps have been established here. And now we are going to go to the first verse, the principal verse of this Anuched. And really, when we came to the end of the previous one, it said that that atha, and it was correct for me to say that now the Priti Sandarbha is to be written. After glorifying, he ended the previous section by glorifying love, by showing that all living beings are seeking love, that even in this world a person is ready to give up his life for love, but that the problem is that we don't find a proper object for that love. And so until we come to the point of loving God, until we come to the point of loving Krishna, until we come to the point of loving Bhagavan, we will not experience the promise that is there in the act of loving. So the last part, I've given the title here to the last part is that what is being stated here is that the purpose of this scripture is to promulgate kaivalya, by which Jiva Goswami means priti. So the word, we had two words, and I think the Babaji mentioned in one of his commentaries above, that kaivalya and mukti, these, for the Vaishnava, these words really mean priti, even though they have another meaning which is rejected. For instance, in the fourth canto, when the Lord appears to Prithu in the sacrifice, and he asks him to take a boon. And so in his answer, Prithu says that, O Kaivalya-pati, he calls him Kaivalya-pati, or the master of Kaivalya. This is one of the terms. Kaivalya is used many, many times in the Bhagavatam, and it's used with different meanings. And I intend to just do a little research. I've done most of the research already and write a small article on the blog, just delineating the different terms or the different meanings that have been given to Kaivalya in the Bhagavatam. I think I forget how many usage. I think it was there were 25, was it? I think, but anyway, there were somewhere around 20, 25 instances of the use of the word Kaivalya in the Bhagavatam. And in Gaudiya Vaishnava Vidhan, Haridas Das gives 13 different meanings for Kaivalya, and he doesn't touch on all of them. And as a matter of fact, in this particular Anuched, 3 meanings are given for Kaivalya. So there's 3 meanings. So there's 3 meanings of Kaivalya here in this Anuched alone. So, but the principal meaning that we will take is that Kaivalya means mukti. Kaivalya means liberation, and liberation means, for us as Vaishnavas, really means priti, and that's actually what he's going to state here, right? So, glorifying priti, he comes to the conclusion in the last 1.6, so we came to the end. He says, so this is in the sequence of, in the order of things. Now we have to understand what is our goal. What is the ultimate goal? What is the ultimate purpose of the Srimad Bhagavatam? We've stated what is the sambandha, what is the particular nature of the truth in relationship to the world and in relationship to the individual soul, and so on. What are the different metaphysical relationships that exist between the basic substances that are present in the universe, namely God, nature, and the individual soul or individual consciousness. And then the second thing was, well, what are we supposed to do in view of that particular situation? What is it that we do? And then by doing that, what is the goal that we get? So what we do, that's in Bhakti Sandarbha, and now the goal, the ultimate goal, is prayojana. So this word prayojana, which is means this is stated directly in the Bhagavatam, and that is what is going to be stated. So tadetat bhagavat-prīter eva parama-puruṣārthatve samarthite sādhūktaṁ atha prīti-sandarbho lekhya ity-ādi. So as love for Bhagavan has thus been approved as the supreme goal of life by the argumentation that has come up to now, it was correctly stated at the very beginning of this Anuched, or the very beginning of this book. Now the treatise on love of God, or Priti Sandarbha, is to be written. So, sa esha eva parama-puruṣārthaḥ krama-rītyā sarvopari darshayitum sandribhyate. So this text is being composed to show in an orderly fashion that love is above all other aims of human life. Tatrokta-lakṣaṇasya mukti-sāmānyasya śāstra-prayojanatvam atha. Right? So he says that mukti in general, as defined above, is the purpose of the scripture, has been stated by Sutta Goswami. So the point here is that he uses that mukti-sāmānyasya, the ukta-lakṣaṇasya. So there's two things that are stated. He says that there's an ukta-lakṣaṇasya, so the lakshanas, the characteristics have been already stated. But he says mukti-sāmānyasya. So by saying mukti-sāmānyasya, he wants to incorporate both the definitions of Brahman Sakshatkar and Bhagavat-Sakshatkar. So mukti-sāmānyasya śāstra-prayojanatvam atha. So though the goal, this mukti, this general concept of mukti, is the goal of all the scriptures. So it's not just the purpose of the Bhagavatam, it's the purpose of all scriptures, right? So whether or not, we're taking that one goal is this Brahma Sakshatkar, so that's being incorporated here. The idea is that, what this is called samanvaya. In the Vedanta, you have the first pada of the Vedanta is called samanvaya pada. So the idea there is that disparate scriptural statements that appear to be contradictory, those have to be brought into harmony. And that harmony is called samanvaya. So the Bhagavatam also has apparently contradictory texts, and Jiva Goswami's purpose, especially in the beginning of each of the Sandarbhas, wherever the subject, depending on the particular subject of the Sandarbha, he's taking statements. For instance, like in Krishna Sandarbha, the first 105 or whatever statements are all those statements that don't agree with the principal guiding statement of the Bhagavatam. So basically, so far we've had two principal guiding shlokas in the Bhagavatam. One is the Vadanti tattva vidas tattvam yajñānam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. This one, and the other one is Krishna stu bhagavan swayam. So after establishing in the Krishna Sandarbha that Krishna is the Bhagavan Swayam, he has to go and look at all the different statements in the Bhagavatam that seem to say something that contradicts that, and to show how those statements are to be reinterpreted, or how they can be reinterpreted, or how they should be reinterpreted according to the context or according to whatever reason, which shows how those verses can properly be shown not to supersede or contradict, in actual fact, the Krishna stu Bhagavan Swayam king-like statement. The statement is the king, and all the other statements in the Bhagavatam are like sermons to that king. So once he's established that this idea that kaivalya or mukti really means priti. So, but for those people who don't understand, or the people who don't know about priti, they can still understand that mukti, in terms of Brahma Sakshatkar, is still the goal of the scriptures. But that genuine, for the Vaishnava, the true mukti lies in priti. So here, that verse, the verse that he's going to quote, that he quotes here to show this, to make this point. So this is the main verse of the Anuched, the main verse of this portion of the Priti Sandarbha. And it was previously quoted in Tattva-Sandarbha. Here he doesn't complete the whole verse. It's quoted in Tattva-Sandarbha in full in Tattva-Sandarbha 52, and there's an elaborate explanation of the verse there. So this is actually added on. So if you look at krama-sandarbha, you will find that both of these commentaries are joined together. What is stated in the one is also stated in the, they're both included in the krama-sandarbha. So the first thing he says is the verse begins with sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ. So sarva-vedanta, so the point that he's making by just quoting that one portion, so sarva-vedanta, by saying that sarva-vedanta, the end of the Veda, so the concluding portion of the Veda, the Vedanta, the Upanishads and the Vedanta Sutra, the concluding portion, so the meaning that basically that what that's saying is that all the scriptures ultimately conclude, because the Bhagavatam is the essence of all the Vedanta and all the Veda. So, and then the next part is the last portion in the fourth quarter of the verse. It says kaivalyaika-prayojanam. So the one purpose, the one goal, the one ultimate purpose of the Bhagavatam is to promulgate kaivalya. It has the one purpose of this scripture is kaivalya. So now the important point again is to understand how is kaivalya meant here. So if you look at the whole verse, it certainly does look like Advaita Tattva. It certainly looks like Brahma Tattva. It says sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ yat brahmātmaikatva-lakṣaṇam brahma-atma-ekatva-lakṣaṇam. So the essence of all the Vedanta is the oneness, is characterized by the oneness of Brahma and the Atma. So Brahma and Atma are one. This is really the fundamental idea. Tat tvam asi. Yes? So Atma is the tvam padartha and Brahma is the tat padartha. And so tat tvam asi means brahmātmaikatvam. So that is the essence of all the Vedanta teaching, tat tvam asi, of the four Mahavakyas. See, I was just saying guiding principles. So the Mahavakyas for Vedanta, these are the guiding principles. So Shankaracharya interprets everything in the light of those four Mahavakyas, in particular the Tattvamasi. So sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ yat brahmātmaikatva-lakṣaṇam vastu. So there's a particular vastu in the beginning of the Bhagavatam. Vedyam vastavamatra vastu. Vastu means a substance, or in substantive, the substantial thing, the real thing. So the vastava vastum is the real substance, the substantive substance. So in the Bhagavatam, that is the promise to give us the vastavam vastu, not some vastu as promulgated by the Nyaya Shastra, or where it's just simply any principle, a substance, but it's the vastava vastu, or the absolute reality. So that vastu is advitiyam, without a second. And now tan-niṣṭhaṁ. So tan-niṣṭhaṁ means devoted to that, or fixated on that. Kaivalyaika-prayojanam. So this is referring back to this verse doesn't state the name of Srimad Bhagavatam anywhere in it, but that's because in a previous verse, right, it was stated, sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ hi śrī-bhāgavatam ishyate tad-rasamrita-triptasya nānyatra syāt ratih kvachit. So we already know that here. This is from the very last chapter of the Bhagavatam. It's the concluding portion of the Bhagavatam. Please remember that one of the important guiding interpretive tools that is being used by Jiva Goswami are 6 principles by which one can understand a text. So if anyone is trying to analyze a text, and this goes for, let's say, if you're a high school student and you're doing a book report, right? So if you're doing it, then you're trying to analyze what is the goal, what is the purpose of an author, what is he trying to say? Well, the thing, you look at what's in the beginning and the end of the book. You look at what has been repeated numerous times in the book. You look at what has been glorified, what has been praised in the book, and so on. So you have 6 of these different things, and perhaps the most important one that we have is the beginning and the end, what is stated at the beginning, because generally speaking, one states, as it is often said for speakers, that in the beginning you should say what you're going to say, then you say it, and in the end you say what you said. Right? So if you want to know what someone wants to say, you look in the beginning to see what he says he's going to say, and at the end you look to see what he says he said. So in this particular case, this is what the Bhagavatam says at the end. That sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ, see, he makes the word sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ, he says it twice. That this is the essence, just like in the beginning, he also said nigamala, sakala nigama, that nigama kalpataror galitam phalam, that this is the ripened fruit of all the scripture. So this idea that this is the essence of all the scripture, sarva-vedānta-sāra, that this is stated. Now, what is the essence of all the Veda? Well, there were 2 things that are stated. Well, first of all, it's the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the essence of all the Veda, and that if you taste this rasa, so at the beginning it said that muhuraho rasika, that pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam, muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. So the rasa was spoken of in the first verse, and again in the last chapter he talks about the tadrasamrita triptasya nanyatra syadrati kvachit. And we've seen here in this beginning that raso vaisaha yam yevayam labdva anandi bhavati. So this concept, the Vedantic concept of rasa, that once having attained, one experiences the supreme joy and one will never be interested in anything else. That is the promise of the Bhagavatam, stated at the beginning and at the end. Now here again he mentions sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ. What is that sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ? What is it that he's talking about? What is this rasa that he's talking about? Well, it's this supreme absolute truth that is known as both Brahma and as Paramatma and as Bhagavan. So this Bhagavatam, the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, is tan-niṣṭhaṁ. The tan-niṣṭhaṁ means that it is dedicated to this tat, this yat. That's a yat-tat sentence, right? When we're learning about in the Sanskrit grammar. Yat-tador nitya sambandha. That there's an eternal relationship, and where there's a yat, there has to be a tat. Where there's a relative pronoun or a relative adjective, or relative pronoun or a relative adverb, right? There has to be a corresponding, another corresponding pronoun, right? So yat and tat. So here we have yat. So yat, brahmāikatva-lakṣaṇam, advitiyam vastu, sarva-vedānta-sāraṁ, asti, śrīmad-bhāgavatam, tan-niṣṭhaṁ, kaivalyaika-prayojanam. That's the way you would read the anvaya of that. So devoted to this one undivisible truth is the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which has as its purpose kaivalya. Its one purpose, its one goal is for you to attain kaivalya. So now we have to just simply understand, what does the Bhagavatam mean by kaivalya? Does it mean only Brahma Jnana? Well, we've already seen. It means either Brahma Jnana, Paramatma Jnana, or Bhagavat Jnana. And we've subsumed Paramatma to Bhagavan because Paramatma doesn't have really an independent eternal existence separate from Bhagavan. It's an expansion or an angsha of Bhagavan. And its reality, its functionality is only in relationship to the impermanent material world. It's the God of this world, you could say. So therefore, it's either Brahma or Bhagavan. So this verse nicely uses a terminology that will satisfy either group, and or it would be more satisfying, obviously, to the Brahmavadis than to the Vaishnavas. But the Vaishnavas who understand it properly, they will have no fear. So I'll read the translation that was used in the Tattva Sandarbha 52. This Bhagavatam is the essence of all Vedanta philosophy, because its subject matter is the absolute truth, which is one that its subject matter, tan-niṣṭhaṁ. Because its subject matter is the absolute truth, which is one without a second, as characterized by the oneness in love of the individual living being with Brahman. The one ultimate attainment or prayojan proclaimed in this book is kaivalya, literally aloneness, which here implies pure devotion alone to that supreme truth, devoid of any extraneous element. So, as you can see, this translation contains a lot of information that is not found in the verse itself. You get the interpretations put in square brackets. Nevertheless, I would say that yes, you have to do that in order if you want to show the conclusion. But the point behind Jiva Goswami is that he's not necessarily he's explaining the conclusion in the commentary. Normally, if you're reading the verse, you would look at this verse and you'd go, a devotee would go, oh boy, what's going on here? This is all about Brahma-gyan. What's the, there's nothing here about devotion. The goal of the Bhagavatam is kaivalya. And we know that kaivalya means aikyam, right? So this is actually stated, as I was saying, that there are numerous uses of the word kaivalya everywhere in the Bhagavatam. So sometimes the commentators say one thing, sometimes they say another. But the fundamental meaning of kaivalya is aikyam. You can see that in Canto 3, chapter 11, verse 2. Sridhar Swami says kaivalyam aikyam, and that's the exact meaning of kaivalya. Kaivalya means oneness. Right? Kaivalya means oneness, and kaivalya means one or alone. So here, this is what he said in the commentary. He said kaivalya, which literally means aloneness. Kaivalya means alone. This alone. I'm alone. Aham kevalaha gachami. I go alone. Like that. Or only this. That's the onlyness, right? The onlyness of something. But of course, Vaishnavas have we have Prabodhananda Saraswati's famous verse that kaivalyam narakayate. When I was in Rishikesh in the beginning, because the very clear statement of the Yoga Sutra is that the goal is kaivalya, whereas in the Brahmavada, in the Vedanta, kaivalya is not necessarily the favored word for liberation. But in yoga, there's no other word. Mukti is rarely used as kaivalya. So I used to joke, kaivalyam narakayate. But we could say that that is, and I was saying, I was just giving that story. I wandered off a little bit. And when Prithu, when Vishnu offers him a boon, then Prithu calls him, he says, I don't want any boon from you. But in his statement, he says, he calls Krishna, or calls Vishnu, Kaivalya-pati. So in the subsequent verse, the pūrva-paksha is, well, you called me Kaivalya-pati, so maybe you want Kaivalya. You don't want any other boon, but you want liberation. And then he says, no, I don't want liberation either. What I want is to have millions of ears so that I can hear the glories of your pastimes from the mouths of pure devotees. So there you see that that kaivalya is not taken as, kaivalya is being rejected. It's not the kaivalya that is wanted. Right, so let's see what Jiva Goswami has to say here. So his interpretation is that kevala means shuddha. So this is not the only place where he said that. So shuddha, so if we say kevala, so we can understand this. If we say that kevala means only, so something that's pure only has that substance, right? So if you have pure milk, then that means that it's not mixed with water, right? So if you have a pure substance, then it only has that substance alone. So we use often the term about Brahma, that it's eka rasa. This term that the Advaitavadians like to use, that eka rasa, that it's only got one flavor. So if you bite into a simply wonderful, as Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada used to say, that it will taste sweet no matter which side you bite into it. It's always sweet. So whether it's Krishna's feet or Krishna's head, whether it's Krishna's pastimes or Krishna's name, Krishna's form, his name, his attributes, they are all Sachidananda, they are all Eka Rasa. So it's Shuddha, it's pure. So that's so he takes pureness as being the essential meaning of Kevala. Kevala means pure, and so therefore tasya bhava kaivalya. So tasya bhava, this is what you call tadhita, right? That you take the quality, the essential quality of something. So in English we have ness or hood, or that this is good. Good is the adjective, and then goodness is the abstract noun formed from it. So kevala is an adjective, and kaivalya is the abstract noun. So you have pure and purity or pureness, right? So the word kevala means pure, and its essence is kaivalya, or purity. So tad ekam prayojanam parama-puruṣārthatvena pratipadyam yasya tadidam śrī-bhāgavatam ity pūrva-ślokasthenānvayaḥ. So he says, so that which has this as its only goal means parama-puruṣārthatvena pratipadyam. So it's the object is to teach or to explain or to promulgate as this kaivalya as the supreme goal of human life. And that is the śrī-bhāgavatam. So Jiva Goswami notes here that śrī-bhāgavatam is not mentioned in the verse, but it was mentioned in the previous verse. So the two verses should be taken together as syntactically connected, and that's what we call anvaya. So that's why he says pūrva-ślokasthenānvayaḥ. The word is stated, śrī-bhāgavatam is stated in the previous verse, and so they should be taken together. So let me read that translation. That book in which this kaivalya alone is established as the supreme goal or prayojan is the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. And since the words Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam are not found in this verse, one must adduce it from the previous one with which it is syntactically connected. Right? So that tat. So now here he's giving a bit of explanation. Why is that? So doṣa-mūlaṁ. Doṣa-mūlaṁ hi jīvasya parama-tattva-jñānābhāva eva. Ity-uktam. Vayam dvitiya-biniveshatak ity-ādau. Ishād apetasya ity-ādibhiḥ. So here Jiva Goswami quotes another one of his famous or favored verses, and this was actually the verse that he was the principal verse of the first anucheda of Priti Sandarbha. And quite correctly so, because the root defect in the living being, doṣa-mūlaṁ hi jīvasya parama-tattva-jñānābhāva. Right? So this was already stated right in the very beginning, and it's been stated many times. The lack of knowledge of this absolute reality is the root defect in the living entity. So this was stated in Canto 11, Chapter 2, verse 37, with the words bhayam dvitiya biniveshatak. So here he hasn't quoted the full verse. Well, probably, oftentimes if he's quoted the verse or explained it earlier, he doesn't necessarily quote the entire verse, but pinpoints which parts of the verse he wants to emphasize. So the two parts that he's emphasizing here are bhayam dvitiya biniveshatak. So we've already talked about that, right? That the Upanishads in numerous places state that fear is the consequence of seeing duality. If you see duality, duality means to see yourself as apart from the supreme reality. You identify with this body, you identify with the non-truth, and then because you identify with this non-truth, with this avastava vastu, this body, which is an unreal substance, and therefore it's subject to death. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doṣa-mūlaṁ. You become connected to that, and therefore you are afraid. Everybody's afraid of their mortality. So that was stated not only, it's stated in the Mundaka Upanishad, it's also stated in the Taittiriya, as we were talking before, that it was said that if you see something other than this one non-dual substance, in which you get rasa, and from which you get ananda. If you don't see that, well, the opposite of ananda is bhaya. The state of conditioned life is fear. So he says that fear arises from absorption in duality, bhayam dvitya-abhinivesha takshyat. And in that verse it says, ity-ādi-bhiḥ. So the bhayam dvitya-abhinivesha takshyat, that's satisfactory to the non-dualists. And ity-ādi-bhiḥ, that's the statement from the dualist point of view. So both the dualist and non-dualist are both stated in the same verse. So that whole verse, bhayam dvitya-abhinivesha takshyat ity-ādi-bhiḥ viparya-yok asmritihi tamaya to buddha abhajetam bhakti-ādi-bhiḥ guru daivatatma. So the verse there is actually a formula for what to do in order to get out of this situation by the intelligent person or the awakened person, the woke person. He worships the Supreme Lord, the one from whom he has turned away. This is the language of the Priti Sandarbha, the first anuched. That from which he has turned away, he turns towards that. So bhakti, the avideya, is tattva-vimukyam, to turn towards the tattva. So our situation in ignorance is to be turned away from the supreme truth. But now that we have the knowledge of the sambandha, as explained in the first 4 sandarbhas, now our job, the avideya, the instruction, what to do, is to turn ourselves towards that supreme truth. So how do we do that? We do that by abhajetam bhakti-ādi-bhiḥ, with a single-pointed devotion and centered on making the spiritual master the worshipable deity of the self, making him our worshipable deity. So that was stated in the 11.237. So now he goes on. So atha taj-jñānam shuddhatvam iti kaivalya-śabdasyātra pūrva tad-anubhava eva tāt-paryam. So now he's giving a conclusion of what is meant by kaivalya. He says, therefore, knowledge alone of that supreme absolute truth is purity, shuddhatvam. So therefore, the ultimate purport of the word kaivalya is to have that knowledge. So anubhava, so the word knowledge is translated as anubhava, or direct experience. So the aparokṣānubhava, the direct experience. So we don't say aparokṣānubhava because, and this will be explained in the coming anucheds, that the experience of God in the heart or the experience of God in the senses, the 2 different ways of experiencing God and 2 different ways of experiencing the personal God. So of the 2, the external experience of God is considered to be superior, to see God with the actual senses, to have actual perception of God with the senses. And in that way, it's a higher truth. So therefore he says that the word kaivalya ultimately translates into direct experience of the supreme absolute truth. And that is the meaning here, kaivalyaika-prayojanam. So the purpose of the śrī-bhāgavatam is to lead you to the direct experience or the ultimate purpose of life, a direct experience of the absolute truth. Only knowledge of the absolute is purity. And thus, as shown previously, The only purport of the word kaivalya applicable here is direct experience of the Absolute. Now he gives two other meanings, two other alternative meanings for kaivalya, and these are somewhat less, I think, less strong, but nevertheless, let's take into account. As I said, there were at minimum 13 definitions of kaivalya given in the commentaries of the Bhagavatam. So we'll look at those. I'll put up an article on the blog, as I've promised now several times, and I'll try to get that into the blog as soon as possible, so that anybody who's interested in the subject can check it out. So alternatively, atha, kaivalya-śabdena paramasya svabhava evochyate. So he says that alternatively, the word kaivalya means the nature, the svabhava, of the Absolute, or the parama. All right. So again, the word parama, kevala. The word kevala means alone or unique. So the Supreme Absolute Truth is unique. So the characteristic that the unique Supreme Truth has, that is kaivalya, right? Kevala and kaivalya. Kevala is the adjective, and kaivalya is the quality that is that the abstract noun derived from the adjective. So kevala means unique, and so kaivalya is the uniqueness. So it means that what makes the Supreme Absolute Truth unique. So that is his nature. So this is actually stated, so that the nature of the kevala is kaivalya. That's actually just as we said before. Kaivalya-śabdasyātra, kaivalyam. So here, swabhava is another way of saying bhava, the nature. So as stated in the Skanda Purana, so this is the quote that he's used, so I don't see this one. This hasn't been, this wasn't one of the 13 meanings that I got. Right? So brahmāśānādibhiḥ devaya, brahmāśānādibhiḥ devaya, yat praktum naiva shakyate, sa yat svabhavaha kaivalyam, sa bhavan kevalo hare. So I think my translation, I'm going to change this translation a little bit. So because it says, saying that O Bhagavan, let's just read the translation that he has here, and we'll just adjust it a little bit. O Bhagavan Hari, hey Hari, that which gods like Brahma and Shiva are unable to achieve. Brahmāśānādibhiḥ devaya yat praptum naiva shakyate. So that yat is the relative pronoun. So that which they are not able to achieve, sa yat svabhavaha kaivalyam, that is the kaivalyam. So this is actually the word here, is that the tat is not mentioned. So the point when you say yat tador nitya sambandha, that means that sometimes you don't see a tat, or sometimes you don't see a yat, but there's always an implication. If you see a regular pronoun, right, that always refers to something that's gone before. If I say he, right, if I hadn't told you who I'm talking about, well, then you'll become confused, right? So I say he's walked in, well, then you'll immediately ask who has walked in. But if I say that my Guru Dev has walked into the room, he is such a great soul, well, you automatically understand who he is, because the referent is also already, it's the person who came in the door, right? So here, in this particular case, we have the word yat is repeated twice, and then you have no tat. So, but the tat is the kaivalyam. So sa yat swabhava. So he who possesses that nature which is kaivalya, kaivalyam, and that is you alone, Hari. So you, the kevala here is the adjective meaning alone. So here he has O Bhagavan Hari, that which gods like Brahma and Shiva are unable to achieve. and whose swabhava is kaivalya, and that is you, the kevala. So I would translate the kevala to you who are unique. So your uniqueness, your characteristics. So what makes you unique? What makes him what makes the Supreme unique is that which can never be attained by any other god, whether it's Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva or anybody else. So that is really a bit tautological, because he is unique. So uniqueness means that it's not attainable by anybody else. It's not had by anybody else, but it's more than just uniqueness here, because it's the other characteristics of the Supreme Absolute Truth, which are not possessed by any of the other gods or principalities or powers or manifestations in the world. So then he goes on. Kvachit swartika tad hit-antena kaivalya-śabdena api parama-uruṣārthatvena. So here again, he just said paramasya svabhava kaivalyam. So now he's saying that kevala, which means unique or supreme, because by this saying that what is truly unique is the supreme. So another meaning of kevala is supreme, parama. And so kevala, if it's the supreme, you can take the tadhita suffix or the tadhita affix, right? The creation of an abstract noun. So in some cases, in Sanskrit, the abstract noun has the same meaning as the adjective itself. So here it means supreme. So what does he say? Paravaranam. So he says, as it was stated in the Dattatreya Shiksha, so this is in the 11th canto, 9th chapter, and these verses have also been quoted elaborately. I believe it was in the, which Sandarbha here? It was quoted in the Paramatma-Sandarbha 59. So there's a whole sequence of verses there that are related to the creation and so on, and has again, the word kevala and kaivalya appear a couple of times in that sequence. So you can go and look it up. Paramatma-Sandarbha 59. So we do hopefully, here we are, this is the last of the Sandarbhas, and hopefully you'll be able to get your knowledge of all the Sandarbhas that will all be reprised here. So let me quickly go through the end here. It says, Paravaranam parama aste kaivalya sangyataha kaivalya-śabdasyātra sandōho nirupadikaha. Sometimes the Absolute is described by the word kaivalya also, which is formed by applying the swartika tadhita suffix on the word kevala, where the derivative meaning is the same as the word on which it is applied. As stated in the teachings of Sri Dattatreya, the Lord, designated as kaivalya, is the supreme shelter for his own plenary portions as well as for the differentiated portions, the jivas. He is the totality of pure kevala bliss and experience, untinged by anything material. He is eternally devoid of any material designation. So that's the translation. We just plucked it right out of the Paramatma-Sandarbha. All right. So tatapyubhayataiva tad-anubhava eva tāt-paryam. So in both those cases, in these two previous verses here, it says that the purport is in the realization of his nature. So to realize the Supreme, or to realize the nature of his Supreme, that is the idea behind this kaivalyaika-prayojanam. The purpose of the Bhagavatam is to bring you to a realization of the Supreme Absolute Truth, or of that pure of Priti, or of the nature of the Supreme. So all these three meanings are being reduced now to the same thing. It is only to give realization, tatsvabhavamevava, tamevanubhavayitum śāstram pravrittam ity-ārthaha. So this is the last word. And so it is only to give his realization that this book, Srimad Bhagavatam, has been propagated. So let's just read the commentary. Babaji's commentary here is fairly short. And we've run out of time, but I have enough time to read. I'll read the commentary here. So, in this anuchhed of the Priti Sandarbha, Sri Jiva Goswami has established that Priti is the highest Purushartha. Traditionally, only 4 Purusharthas are spoken of in India, namely Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha or Mukti. To present Priti as the 5th Purushartha is a unique contribution of Srila Jiva Goswami Pad. This is the justification for writing the Priti Sandarbha. He furthermore makes the claim that this is the only purpose of the śrī-bhāgavatam, kaivalyaika-prayojanam. In Advaita Vedanta, the word kaivalya is commonly used to mean mukti or attaining Brahman. The word kevala means only. Thus, kaivalya could mean onlyness. Take that as it is. Which in that doctrine means freedom from all duality. In other words, realization of oneness or absolute identity with Brahman. But such a meaning goes against the very spirit of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, which promulgates bhakti as the supreme goal, or prema bhakti as the supreme goal, as was shown in Priti Sandarbha. Therefore, Sri Jiva Goswami gives the appropriate interpretation of the word kaivalya as priti. He says that kevala means pure, so kaivalya thus means purity. This can only mean the experience of Bhagavan because that experience dispels the root cause of all impurity, which is the absence of knowledge about Bhagavan. The purpose of all rules and regulations, the absence of the direct experience of Bhagavan is really what that should mean. The purpose of all rules and regulations stated in the scriptures is to bring us to remembrance of Bhagavan and to never forget him. That was Bhakti Sandarbha. Therefore, bhakti or priti is the ultimate purpose of all scriptures. Well, bhakti was the process of turning towards Bhagavan or turning towards the tattva, and the prayojan is to have direct experience of the tattva. That's the difference between bhakti and priti, even though the 2 words can be synonymous. So kaivalya is a, well, that's the end. And after that, this is what is going to go into my subsequent file about kaivalya. All right, well, that's it. That's it for today. Thank you very much. I hope that you're following along. Look in the comments and also on the blog to find the text and also a synopsis of the contents of each reading. And with that, I say, sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaḥ, sarve bhadrani pashyantu ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet, purnam madah purnam midam purnat purnam udachyate, purnasya purnamadaya purnam evavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe, Jai Jai Sri Radhe Shyam, Jai Jai Sri Radhe.